Good morning, everybody. Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District Representative Tom Tiffany is joining us today, Thursday, February 9th, 2023. Congressman Tiffany joins us every second Thursday of the month to discuss all things going on in the 7th CD and Washington, D.C. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and we are streaming today's show live on Dryden Wire's Facebook page, Dryden Wire's YouTube channel, and for the first time, we're attempting, not sure if it's going to work, to stream this live on Twitter as well. So however you are watching, welcome and thank you for joining us. As always, if you have a question for the Congressman, please feel free to let us know in the comments during today's live show. Special thank you to businessman, attorney, and former Wisconsin legislator Adam Jarchow for joining me earlier this week, who was filling in for Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald for our weekly Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show. And yesterday, Waukesha County Court Judge and conservative candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court, Jennifer Dorow, was our very special guest. You can watch a recording of those and all of our live shows on our website at DrydenWire.com, our Facebook page, or on our YouTube channel. But today, we're chatting with Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District Representative Tom Tiffany. Tom, good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning. How much will you pay me if I watch the Jarchow interview?
I'll give you $10. If you can,
okay.
How about this? If you can make it to the end, I'll give you $10.
Hey, by the way, hopefully this is working streaming with Twitter. Just so everybody knows that the FBI is probably taking notes as we speak also.
Oh, you're killing me. Oh, man. We better be minding our P's and Q's today.
Okay. I'll try not to compromise the Dryden Wire.
I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I wrote down only 4 topics. Didn't get a chance to actually ask if these are things that you wanted to talk about. And, of course, anything you want to talk about, we can. One of them was the recent, I guess it's just called spy balloons. I wanted to get your take on that, if that's all right. President Biden did his State of the Union. Just get your feedback and your views on how that went. Then there was a Wisconsin Supreme Court race coming up, and wanted your views on that as well. And then also, we had questions from someone, actually it was my dad, Terry Dryden, who couldn't watch the show this morning. He had an appointment, but he had some questions that he wanted to have me ask you, since he couldn't ask during the live show. So where do you want to start?
Wherever you want to start, Ben.
I don't know. I just make this stuff up as I go.
It says Dryden Wire on there. It's your show.
It really isn't, but okay. It's your show.
Okay.
It's Breakfast with Tiffany. That's right. Oh, I used to have that banner that said Breakfast with Tiffany. I forgot all about it.
It's kind of like saying to our wives when they say, "Well, it's your house too." No,
it isn't.
It's not.
No, it isn't. Exactly.
Let's disabuse ourselves of this.
All right. Well,
should we talk about balloons?
Let's talk about spy balloons first. So that's what it's called in media, and I don't know if that's what it is. It sounds like there's more and more information that's kind of coming out each day and each whatever. So when this all this stuff happened, you see all this. I don't know what you're privy to or what knowledge that you have and what you can share, but what were your thoughts about the whole situation regarding a weather balloon / now spy balloon shooting things down things? What are your views on this?
Weakness. Weakness leads to aggression. That's what we're seeing here in America. It goes all the way back to January 20th of 2021 when President Biden said, we're going to open the southern border. No longer, we're going to basically be a borderless country. And then you also have the Keystone Pipeline being shut down, which is a clear signal to the rest of the world. We're no longer going to be energy independent. Disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, leaving behind $85 billion worth of war material. More importantly, 13 of our nation's finest were left at the gates of Kabul, the Kabul airport. And so the rest of the world could see that we were weak, and the Chinese are exploiting that. And that's what I believe the spy balloon thing is about. If you take a look at the route that it took, it went up through the North Pacific, over Alaska, over some of our military installations, then went down through Montana over some of the military installations there, in particular where our nuclear missiles are, intercontinental ballistic missiles are housed, and then went across similar areas that contain our most important military, some of our most important military assets, the Chinese balloon got a picture of the whole thing. And I think it's that weakness. I mean, they could have shot it down. What's not being reported is that it could have been shot down over the northern Pacific as it was heading into Alaska, as it was going over Alaska. I mean, the Biden administration gave the excuse. They said, boy, we didn't want to shoot it over any of the states because we're concerned that people could be harmed by this. And while there's maybe a bit of legitimacy there, but Alaska and Montana, and they're getting all these pictures. Instead, they wait until it's out over the Atlantic, and the Chinese got all the information that they wanted to.
How do you think we so is it your view that from the information that you have, we should have shot this down much, much earlier before we did?
Yeah, they saw it coming over the northern Pacific, headed for Alaska. I mean, when it hit Alaska, when it hit our territory, you should have shot it down.
Is this something that Americans should be concerned about?
Yeah, they should be deeply concerned. You know, it isn't just about it's one balloon, right? I mean, if it's one balloon, you know, okay, not that big a deal. But let's add all this up. The communist Chinese, the mainland Chinese, are threatening Taiwan regularly. One of the most important democracies that you'll find in Southeast Asia. And they continue to threaten them. They've enslaved the minority Uyghurs in Western China, which, by the way, if you have an iPhone, if you're wearing Nikes and some of those, they may have been made by slave labor in China. You go back just a few years when the previous administration threw the Chinese out of the embassy in Houston, Texas, because they were stealing our information. It's widely known by major corporations across America, and small companies for that matter too, that the Chinese have been stealing their intellectual property for a long time. They're embedding themselves in our universities, especially our great research universities. And I have that concern with the University of Wisconsin-Madison that they're doing that. When you add all of that up, you see what China's doing. And China has made no bones about it, while most of the American people don't know this. They've made no bones about it. They expect to be the preeminent country in the world for the 21st century. What is going on right now is a great battle. Is the 21st century going to be an American century, or is it going to be a Chinese century? Just as the 20th century was an American century, the Chinese are saying the 21st century belongs to us. And they're taking advantage of our weakness at this point, the weakness of the Biden administration.
Is China, if you had to kind of put your list together of the countries that you are paying attention to the most and that maybe Americans should be paying attention to the most vis-a-vis largest threat, and I don't necessarily mean threat in terms of nuclear capabilities, but the biggest threat to Americans, where does China fall in there? Obviously, there's, Russia, North Korea, maybe you could throw in Iran and several others. Where does China fall in that list?
Greatest adversary is China. And I think people across the political spectrum will acknowledge that there is number one is China. And there is not a close number two. I mean, China is where they want to achieve world hegemony. They want world dominance. That is what they are seeking. And the rest of them are just, it isn't the same. Now, while I don't support Vladimir Putin and Russia, the big concern I have in regards to the Russia-Ukraine conflict is it's us taking our eye off the ball. I mean, Russia is really small potatoes at this point, not in terms of nuclear capability. Let's be real clear about that. They have the nuclear weapons to do great harm. But in terms of the size of their economy and where their economy is going to be in 20 years, they're not the great power that China is. China is ascendant and they want to dominate the world. They've made it very clear. And we ignore those messages at our own peril.
By the way, I had to look it up because you always use words I don't know. If anyone's wondering, hegemony, the definition is leadership or dominance, especially by one country or social group over others. You always use words I don't know. I feel like you just write these things down. Ben won't know this one. There's a long list of those.
Chinese hegemony, and it describes what's going on Quite accurate.
Yeah, it does clearly. So President Biden had his State of the Union not long ago. Shoot, what is today? Earlier, right? Earlier this week. Yeah,
Tuesday
there you
night.
go. Did you watch this? Were you there? Do you watch it on C-SPAN or on the network channels? Were you there, and what were your takeaways?
I was in attendance in the back of the room, and um, I guess here's my overall takeaway. What we have is a aging, frail president, um, trying to sound tough yet. You heard him yell a few times, about we're a strong America, and but you have this aging, frail president. And here's my concern for America: does that president match where we are in America? A man in decline, like a country in decline. And I think it matches up with what we just talked about in regards to China. Are we going to accept this challenge of the 21st century, which is going to be different in many ways than the 20th century? This isn't Hitler and Stalin and all those despots like that. I mean, it's a different character that's going about it in a different way, President Xi of China. And, but are they seeing an America in decline? I think that is what they see, and I think that's what they perceive. And you clearly have a president who is in decline. And I hope that our country, I hope what I'm saying here is wrong. Whenever Joe Biden is no longer president, I hope that America is once again ascendant. But it is of great concern that we are a country in decline at this point under this current administration.
To be honest, I mean, when I watch President Biden speak, wherever he's speaking, because I don't care if it's a Democrat, Republican that's the president, I support the office of president, just like local sheriffs or assembly persons or Congress. It doesn't matter. But sometimes it is tough watching, or I should say, listening to him. And there's a part of me that feels badly. It just, I don't know, the human part in me, right? That is just, oh, come on. Oh. I really feel badly when I see these reports that he's probably going to be running again. It's like, man, that's like in 2 more years. That'd be 4 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel badly for him. And maybe I shouldn't, but I do.
I mean, going back to the substance of his speech, I thought some of the stuff he talked about early on in the speech about, working people, made in America, stuff like that, I think people generally agree with that. But then he doesn't match what he's saying there in terms of the overarching goal with specific policies. Because, for example, he talked about the Inflation Reduction Act and as well as the infrastructure bill. And like with the infrastructure bill, he's like, it's $1 trillion we're spending, and boy, we're going to rebuild America's infrastructure. But you can't do it with the regulatory state that we have in America. And he didn't talk about that at all. We talk about that regularly as Republicans. We're like, if you want to do these infrastructure projects and get the most bang for the buck for the taxpayers, you have to streamline the regulatory state. I mean, when it's taking 15 to 20 years to get things permitted, when you have a town road in Vilas County, Wisconsin, 2.5 miles, that it's going to cost $1.5 million if you get a federal grant under the infrastructure bill, that you could build for half of that if you didn't go through the federal permitting process. I mean, you got a major problem. And what's going to happen, Ben, sure as night follows day, is 5 to 10 years from now, they're going to say, gosh, we got all these infrastructure needs. We got to get more money to the problem. Well, you could deal with it by changing the regulatory nature that we have that is excessive in the United States of America, that we could build these projects for much less just by reducing all the regulations that you have to go through. And you don't have to change any environmental standards. And we're going to be proposing these things as Republicans. I sit on the Natural Resources Committee. We just had a hearing yesterday when we talked about it, that just reduce those regulations. Don't reduce the environmental standards. We're not saying that at all. Just make that they can get done in 2 years rather than 5 years. They can get done in 3 years rather than 10 years. That's all we're saying. President Biden did not address that. He will not get his infrastructure projects built that he wants with the regulatory state that we have.
We have a couple of questions here, so I just want to touch on one here. This is from Renee. I think this is kind of going back to the China there. Are we going to war? What's your opinion? Because people are truly wondering. Plus, why do we help other countries before ourselves? I'm not sure which part that you're referring to. I don't know if it's Ukraine. I think we've spent or sent now, 21 billion, I think, over to Ukraine. That was as of a couple days ago. I'm not sure if that's what she's referring to, but would you like to address that question?
Yeah,
I'll put it back up there.
Yeah, I'll give a quick comment.
Sure.
So first of all, it's $100 billion to Ukraine.
I thought it was 21.
We've had $100 billion. It was probably another tranche of money they were talking about. There's $100 billion that is gone to or is dedicated to the Ukraine. I would just go back to, actually, for people that are, if they want to go back and read a scholar who wrote about this extensively, and it actually shaped our Cold War policies for after World War II. The man's name is George Kennan. George Kennan believed that we should make sure that we pit Russia and China against each other, have them opposing each other as much as possible. And that is one of the problems with the route that we're taking at this point. As Russia perhaps ends up in a stalemate with the Ukraine, do they get pushed into the arms of China? Because you've already seen him have meetings with President Xi, that he being Vladimir Putin. That is not the direction that we should be going. And so, I mean, we need to get out of the foreign entanglements and make sure that we protect American interests. And I would address the final thing that Renee said in regards to the amount of money we send to foreign countries. I hope everyone realizes that the $1.7 trillion bill, on top of other trillions that was passed just before Christmas, had a provision in there to spend millions of dollars in Middle Eastern countries for them to be able to build walls and fences to be able to protect their borders. Think about that.
Come on.
You as Americans are sending money to the Middle East to build walls and fences in the Middle East, but it can't be done on our southern border.
All right, I feel like you're just making this up now. That can't be true, right? It just can't be.
For all of you people out there in Twitter that are new watchers to the Dryden Wire, do your fact check, and we look forward to hearing from you.
All right, and then we have another question here. This is from Brian. Congressman, I was excited to see you take a stand against anti-Semitism. What I wonder is when you will hold your Republican colleagues to the same standard, i.e. Green and Boebert?
Yeah, so I'm not sure I know what the first part he's referring to when we stood last week. We said that Ilhan Omar, the representative from Minneapolis, who is put out many famously anti-Semitic statements and has compared Israel to committing genocide. She says Israel and America at times are like Hamas. And we said she cannot be on the Foreign Affairs Committee because they get very sensitive information. And we said that she cannot serve on there. We had a vote to that effect. And we said, and by the way, she can serve on other committees. We didn't say to the Democrats she can't serve on other committees, but on Foreign Affairs she cannot because of such sensitive information. And she has proven herself to be an anti-Semite. Sure. We voted on that. I think that was the right thing to do. I think what your listener there is saying, he's trying to conflate saying Representative Green from Georgia, Representative Boebert are of the same ilk. That is not correct. They are not anti-Semites. And Marjorie Green has made some statements in the past before she came into Congress that could be interpreted that way. She has renounced those statements. She has taken those statements back and said that they do not reflect her views now. So I think he's conflating two different issues.
Sure. All right. So I want to talk to you about the Wisconsin Supreme Court race that's coming up in like 12 days from now. But first, I had some questions, and this is regarding Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and VA benefits. Full transparency, I sent you these questions or to your staff yesterday. I assume that they gave them to you. These are from my father, Terry Dryden. He wasn't able to watch the show today, so he asked me to ask you these questions. Otherwise, he would be asking those right now on the show. Just kind of the intro part on behalf of seniors, a couple of questions regarding Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, VA benefits. I ask these questions because my wife and I are recipients of these benefits, and for other seniors who have been asking these questions. His first question is, lately we have received blast emails from various senior organizations that ask members to email the White House and federal legislators about various topics of interest to us. Do Congress members actually pay attention to these many emails, letters, and phone calls regarding issues coming before them?
So when we get mass emails, I think that's what you're referring to as
I believe so,
emails.
yes. Correct.
Yeah, they're just sending it out to everybody. Those are the last ones that we respond to. We will respond to them, but they're the last ones we respond to. Here's who we respond to first. Someone that writes us a letter. Someone that writes an email in their own words, that it isn't, some preformed email. They say, hey, send this out to all your congressmen. And, it goes to hundreds, if not thousands of people. So people that write things in their own words, they get responded to first.
That makes
people
sense.
That call us and share their views, they get responded to first. The blast emails get responded to last.
Follow up to that, he has.
And by the way, Ben, I would just say to people, tell it to us in your own words. We want to hear from you, not someone else that writes this for you, that puts it out on blast. That tells me that, this may be important to you, but it's not important enough to you to write it in your own words. Right. And we want to respond to those people first that write it in their own words.
One of his follow-ups here was the most recent request was send emails to the White House and federal legislature to ask them to take hands off messing with benefits for seniors and veterans. Is the president and or legislators considering reducing Social Security, Medicare, and VA benefits?
So I don't know what the president has planned because I know about 20 years ago, he said that he did want to change Social Security in particular. So I don't know where he stands on that. And but I can tell you, us House Republicans believe that if you have paid into your Social Security and Medicare and you have those benefits coming, we're not touching them.
Got it. And the last one here was, some say that Social Security will be out of money by 2033 and that there will be more 65 and over seniors than kids, thus no one to pay into Social Security. Is that true?
So that is the Social Security and Medicare problem, is that you have fewer working people. What was it when it was started, and you go back to like 1950, it was 1 in 10. You had 10 workers for every person that was getting Social Security and Medicare. Now it's like 1 in 3, and it's headed for 1 in 2. And so that part is a big concern. Here's the most important thing I think we can do, though, in Congress to make sure that Social Security and Medicare can continue to be solvent in the future is stop creating new programs. Look at the trillions of dollars of new programs that have been started over the last couple of years that are now competing with Medicare and Social Security. So when you hear President Biden say, boy, I don't know if Republicans are going to protect Social Security and Medicare, your question back to President Biden should be, how many more new programs are you going to start that are going to have a draw on the American Treasury and are going to leave less money for Social Security and Medicare in the future? Stop creating new programs out of the federal Treasury. And by the way, we do not have a revenue problem in the federal Treasury. We were taking in $2 trillion in 2000. 20 years later, we're taking in $3.5 trillion, nearly twice as much. We have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. Stop creating new programs that are going to drain the federal Treasury.
Wisconsin Supreme Court race. By the way, thank you so much for answering those questions for my old man. Wisconsin Supreme Court race is coming up in 12 days. The first one, the primary, and there's 2 conservatives and 2 liberals. Obviously, it's going to be obviously, but very likely it's going to be one conservative and one liberal, not, two getting in. And the top two vote getters go to the April 4th ballot. Have you been paying attention to that race? Do you endorse anyone in that race? And is this everyone that I talk to and every report that I see, it's a very important race because it's kind of the ideological control of the Supreme Court. But have you been paying attention to it? Do you endorse anyone? And is this something that if people aren't aware of, they really should start paying attention to?
Well, absolutely, they should be paying attention. So I have been paying attention some, but we've been really busy here the first
Right.
month or so of this session of Congress. So I haven't had a lot of time to do that. I think there's two good candidates. I'm not endorsing either Judge Doro or Justice Kelly. I'm not endorsing either one of them. I think they're both good candidates, and let the people decide. Let the people decide. I'll tell you what concerns me as we get to. You would expect either one of them are going to come out of the race, Doro or Kelly. What concerns me is the person that's probably going to come out of it, and I'm not sure how she pronounced her last name. I think it's Protasevich, something like that, from Milwaukee. People should be really concerned about her, and they should read what she's saying because she is prejudging cases. She's already saying where she's going to stand on a variety of issues that may well come before the Supreme Court. That is not how this works. I haven't seen anything like this before, where a judge has prejudged cases in a judicial race before being elected. I think it's disqualifying. And it is deeply concerning to see that happening with Protasevich, one of the judges.
Yeah, and no kidding. We've talked about this on a few shows, like even earlier this week. Judge Doro, when she was on yesterday, talked about it. Adam Jarko, when he was filling for Fitzy, and I think even Fitz and I talked about it, which we usually don't get into this stuff. But yeah, it was kind of I don't care if it's a liberal or left leaning or right. Just that's weird. Like that doesn't seem right. But you think that she may be the one that comes out of it from one of those two on the left? She may.
She's already spent millions of dollars, and the left coast and the East Coast liberals have made it very clear they're going to put millions of dollars in the race, probably behind her. So the Hollywood bunch, the rich BlackRock people that run the hedge funds and stuff like that, the billionaires, they are going to be behind her. Protasevich, if she wins, guaranteed. They want to flip Wisconsin. And what they believe is then they'll be able to take their judicial activism and they will become they'll become a legislature. And that is what's so concerning about Protasevich and what she's doing. And I'm sure Adam explained it far better than I did.
Not really, because it was Adam. Speaking of people that may not or maybe shouldn't have jobs, Dan Erickson has a question. What do you think of, that's a pretty general question there, broad stroke, what do you think of George Santos?
So George Santos is the representative from New York that he has a history of misleading. He is making misleading statements.
That's a nice way of saying it.
Yeah, the people of New York voted for him, and they're going to be able to decide in 2 years whether they want him or not.
I think he was removed from some committees, or maybe he decided
he is not going to serve on committees. He said, I am a distraction. I'm going to serve my term, and then we'll go back to the voters, and they get to decide. Just like whether it's Ilhan Omar or Adam Schiff, we're just saying they can't serve on certain committees because of the sensitive nature of it. But it's up to the people in their districts whether they want them to serve. Same way with George Santos. They voted him in. They're going to be able to decide in November 2024 whether they want him to continue.
Yeah, so I guess I've never thought about that. There is no actual, we're going to fire you kind of a thing. We're not your bosses, if I'm understanding this correctly. It's the people that voted you in, your constituents. They're your boss. They voted you in, and they'll have a chance in 2 years to vote you out. But in the meantime, you're not on committees, and that's pretty much all we can do.
Yeah, I mean, we have removal ability, but the people of that district in New York said, hey, we want this guy. And so now they live with him for 2 years, and they decide, do they still want him in 2 years?
All right. What else? Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get a chance to?
Hey, one final thing. We're doing a press conference tomorrow in Chippewa Falls. It's in regards to the Farm Act that removes subsidies for intermittent sources of power, i.e. wind and solar. And if they take productive farmland out of production. I believe producing energy, and I believe in an all of the above approach. I believe it's one of the most important things that we need to keep our eye on as policymakers. But I think there's one thing that's more important, and that is growing food. And we are seeing thousands of acres in Wisconsin of productive farmland taking out of production for these wind and solar facilities. And I think it is a mistake. We have to stay productive on the agricultural front. I mean, that's who we are in Wisconsin. We grow food. We need to continue to. We're losing thousands of acres to this sprawl of intermittent sources of power. And we're going to do a press conference on it tomorrow.
Chippewa Falls tomorrow. Where?
Chippewa Falls, Ken Custer's farm.
Got it. Hey, didn't I see you got appointed to something recently? Maybe it was a different committee, or maybe you're a chair of a committee.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I sit on Natural Resources and Judiciary. On Natural Resources, I received a subcommittee chairmanship, chair of federal lands, and we will be having a hearing in northern Wisconsin at some point in the next 2 years in regards to federal lands.
Federal? Do we have a lot of that in Wisconsin?
Chequamegon, Nicolet.
Never heard of it.
The National Forest, Ben.
We have I don't go to.
We have 1.5 million acres of federal forest land. We have a national lakeshore up on beautiful Lake Superior. We have a national wildlife refuge down in Necedah, which is actually part of my district also. Yeah, we actually have a significant amount of federal land. Yeah. Twitter followers do now.
No, I don't go outside.
As well as the FBI.
See, stop saying FBI. Oh, no, I just said it because it's going to trigger algorithm somewhere if we keep saying it. It's like Voldemort. It's just we don't say the actual name.
Hey, my staff says I got to get back to work here.
All right, man. Thanks so much for joining me.
We have too much fun on the Dryden Wire.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, man. Special thank you to our guest today, Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District Representative Tom Tiffany, for taking time to join us today. I'll see you back here on Tuesday when Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be back for our latest episode of Positive.
Hey, Ben, remember Valentine's Day. Everybody remember Valentine's Day next week.
All right, thank you. I wrote it down. And so Tuesday, Fitz and I'll be back Wednesday. So 6 days from now, I'll be chatting with Dan Kelly, another conservative candidate running for Supreme Court. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.